A reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and we have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him, and calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out. And there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. May God add a blessing to this reading. The hurry of packing for an unplanned trip filled the halls of homes in the entire world. At least the entire world known to the people who first told the stories of the men packing quickly, because the stars cried out to them, "A great thing has happened here." Caspar packed up against the wishes of his family, who told him, "You're too old to take such a trip. At least take a couple servants with you." He smoothed his long white beard and just kept packing. His finest clothes went in his bags first, so they would be ready when he found what he was searching for. The rich silks of purple and green had been woven years before, but worn few times since. In the folds of the garments, he put his gift of gold, so prized by his fellow Indians and royalty everywhere. He was the first to load his camel and set out, following a star that had appeared in the east, searching for who or what had come. Melchior and Balthazar set out only days later, but many miles apart. The middle-aged Melchior left causing less worry than Caspar, but dropped far more obligations than the old sage. There was grumbling as he, too, packed his finest clothes to set out for a distant land. In the clothes, he packed the finest thing his home country of Yemen had to offer: frankincense. The smell of the frankincense would cling to his clothes for years to come after spending so many days packed together. But when the smell wafted back, it brought with it the best of memories, of a trip many years before, a trip that the world remembered long after his death. And Balthazar set out with barely a second thought. He was young, and this was merely another adventure for him. He had journeyed from Ethiopia before and returned home safely, and was sure he would leave and return to Ethiopia safely again. His finest clothes were not all that fine, but he packed them anyway, and was careful to also take with him the finest thing his country had to offer the world: myrrh. And he set out too, following a star that no one could explain, at least not without some careful study of the stars. As they neared Bethlehem, the three, Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar, found each other. They were travelers on their way to the same place, and found themselves asking for food and lodging from the same people. They soon realized they enjoyed each other's company, and knew they would be better off traveling with others. So they set out together, men of means to say the least. more learned and more wealthy than most people they encountered. And finally, after Melchior and Balthazar had traveled for many days, and Caspar even more, the star they followed stopped, and they knew their journey was nearly over too. And you know well the rest of the story of these three men from India, Yemen, and Ethiopia. Together they sought out King Herod and asked for his help in finding the child they were seeking. Together they went and found the Christ child in Bethlehem. One by one they presented the gifts they had carried with them over many miles, with Caspar first kneeling before the Christ child. It is the story of Epiphany, a story of kings, a king newly born, three kings journeying from far-off lands, and a king who welcomed fellow royalty from afar. A festival of lights. When we hear the words of the prophet Isaiah, "Look, the people walking in darkness have seen a great light," we celebrate. For this visit marks the recognition. This child is the Christ child. And normally, most years we stop there, and we do not tell the rest of the story of the Magi's visit. It's not as pretty as the first part, for they were warned in a dream not to return to King Herod. So they went home a different way. But when the Magi had departed, an angel from the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, or Herod will soon search for the child in order to kill him." Joseph got up and during the night took the child and his mother to Egypt. He stayed there until Herod died. This fulfilled what the Lord had spoken through the prophet. "I have called my son out of Egypt." When Herod knew the Magi had fooled him, he grew very angry. He sent soldiers to kill all the children in Bethlehem and in all the surrounding territory who were 2 years old and younger, according to the time that he had learned from the Magi. This fulfilled the words spoken through Jeremiah the prophet. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and much grieving. Rachel weeping for her children, and she did not want to be comforted because they were no more. The people walking in darkness may have seen a great light, but that light often falls on eyes that are accustomed to darkness. Like people who have been curled up in a dark room, sleeping soundly and had a light turned on. Pulling a blanket over your head and staying in the darkness a while longer seems like a better plan than facing the light. We need the story of all the kings, because all of it is the story of Epiphany. When the light was revealed, the exact same light, some kings came to worship, and another king sent henchmen to slaughter. It might be a story of a glass half full or half empty, a story of threatened or not, or it might be a story deeper about how we choose to interact with the world. Take the community that notices that the empty lot behind the local Target has become a campground. Fires and tents pitched and cars parked, sleeping together for safety because everyone there is homeless. Upon hearing that, one group goes to the city council and they come with a request to add police to the area, to prevent anyone from sleeping there, to maybe bulldoze what is there already. Another group organizes a program to provide housing that is geared toward families, since the nearest shelter is more than 15 miles away, and they go to the same city council and they ask for repeal of current policies so that a shelter can also be built nearer the community that clearly needs it. It turns out we see lights very differently. Even when Christ came, that light was anything but sufficient. Light is always chasing shadows, and the shadows never completely disappear. Sometimes they storm back with a vengeance, refusing to cede their ground. So what do we do? Those who find ourselves chasing shadows. Do what Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar did. Men who are actually so marginal that the Bible never recorded their name. But legends told by Christians gave them many names and many countries of origin. While the history books and the Bible have no trouble recording the name Herod, memory of only the believers had to hold the wise men's names. Yet, this journey of the faithful, faceless, and mostly nameless holy travelers remains a story we tell each year, of people who chose to watch for and wait for the things happening right before their eyes. Do what they do. Believe every time you see a glimpse of holiness that God is doing an amazing, beautiful, history-shattering, world-shifting thing, and you could be part of it from the very beginning. Because those three, maybe more, maybe less, that's the problem when history doesn't record your name or your number. Who knows who these travelers really were? But they could have looked the other way. When they saw the star, they could have shaken off the notion it was anything special. After all, they'd been chasing shadows for a long time too, wondering when God would do something about their mess, something to redeem the world. They could have stayed home, saved their money and their gifts. They could have pulled the covers over their heads and enjoyed the warmth and the shadows a while longer. But they didn't. Instead, they packed bags, left families, drew suspicion, and found something that changed their lives and the world. So join them. Join them in chasing away the shadows, because chasing shadows is the most hopeful act of all. The hope that one day the shadows will flee forever and no one will walk in darkness. Amen.